said he'd be there in 10 minutes.
Okay. I guess he'll let us know.
It doesn't matter, we start at
We start
6.
at 6, okay. I'm with you.
Stephanie, will you pass that on? Check your mics now. Yeah, should be good.
The September meeting of the Spalding County Board of Elections and Voter Registration is hereby called to order. Please silence your cell phones and all other electronic devices. The invocation this evening will be done by me, and the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag will be done by Roy McLean. Would you join me in a word of prayer, please? Gracious Heavenly Father, we ask that you look down upon us this day, and that you bless this meeting with thy Spirit. We seek to do those things that will bring us together as the electors of Spalding County. We seek to follow the laws of the state of Georgia and wish to do so in the spirit of fellowship and friendship. Bless us to these ends, we pray. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Would you please join me in the pledge to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have two citizens who have signed up to speak today, Ron Hoffman and Dr. Yashonda Jones. Yes. Speakers must sign up prior to the meeting and provide their names, addresses, and the topic they wish to discuss. Speakers must direct your remarks to the board and not to individual board members or to the audience. Personal disagreements with individual board members or employees are not a matter of public concern, and personal attacks will not be tolerated. The chairman has the right to limit your comments in the interest of disposing of the board's business in an efficient and respectable manner. Speakers will be allotted 3 minutes to speak on their chosen topics as they relate to matters pertinent to the jurisdiction of the Board of Elections and Registration. No questions will be asked by any of the board members during citizen comments. Outbursts from the audience will not be tolerated. Common courtesy and civility are expected at all times during the meeting. No speaker will be permitted to speak more than 3 minutes or more than once unless the board votes to suspend this rule. Ron Hoffman.
Ron Hoffman, 130 Milner Avenue. Board members, on June 3rd of this year, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, known as CISA, which is part of Homeland Security, issued an advisory outlining 9 specific vulnerabilities inherent in Dominion voting systems. 4 of the vulnerabilities allow a bad actor to take control of a machine and even spread malicious code to other Dominion machines. One of the vulnerabilities is an origin validation error, which is the authentication mechanism used by voters to activate a voting session. This was found to be susceptible to forgery, and an attacker could use this to print an arbitrary number of ballots without authorization. In addition, U.S. District Court has ruled that Dominion Voting Systems is in violation of 2 Georgia statutes, specifically OCGA 21-2-27.1 and OCGA 21-2-300A2. In these codes, electronic ballot markers are required to print an elector-verifiable paper ballot, and this ballot must be in a format that is readable by the elector. This is not readable by any of us, these QR codes. We have no idea what is on these QR codes, and this is a problem. Fortunately, Georgia law also gives us remedies that local governments like yourselves can do to take action in order to secure our elections. One of those same statutes, OCGA 21-2-300A3, states, additionally, at its own expense, the governing authority of a municipality may choose to acquire its own electronic ballot markers and ballot scanners by purchase, lease, or other procurement process. OCGA 21-2-366 states, The governing authority of any county or municipality may, at any regular meeting or at a special meeting called for the purpose, by a majority vote, authorize and direct the use of optical scanning voting systems for recording and computing the vote at elections held in the county or municipality. If so authorized and directed, the governing authority shall purchase, lease, rent, or otherwise procure optical scanning voting systems conforming to the requirements of this part. Optical meaning with our eyes, we can read them, letters, numbers. And ladies and gentlemen, I would urge you, take action, work with our county commissioners, secure the elections, at least in this county, because we don't really, we have an election coming up in just a few weeks, and it's really sad that we're given machines by the Secretary of State's office that violate Georgia law and have been found to be so vulnerable. Thank you.
Can you leave a copy of that with us, please?
Sure.
Thank you very much for your comments.
Thank you.
Dr. Yashonda Jones.
Dr. Yashonda Jones, I read a letter submitted by the Brennan Center for Justice to all County Board of Elections and Registrations, which you should have received in reference to voter roll challenges, and here are some important highlights. Number one, the information submitted is unreliable. Number two, there is no probable cause to sustain these mass challenges. Number three, these mass challenges likely violate the National Voter Registration Act, prior notice and waiting period requirement highlighted. First, these mass challenges, if sustained, could amount to an unlawful purge of the voter rolls based on a change of residence. Under Georgia Code 21-2-230 of the Georgia Code, challenges to voter eligibility can result in the removal of voters from the list of electors, but the challengers cannot avoid the requirements of the NVRA, specifically that one of three conditions be satisfied before removing a voter from the rolls due to a change in residence. Number one, the voter has requested to be removed. Number two, the voter confirmed in writing that he has changed residence, or number three, the voter failed to respond to a notice and failed to vote during the next two federal general election cycles after receiving the notice. 90-day prohibition on systematic removals. The upcoming midterm elections will occur on November 8th, 2022. The NVRA prohibits the systematic removal of voters from the rolls on the grounds of change of residence within 90 days of a federal election. Systematic removal programs are not allowed the 90 days before an election because that is when the risk of disenfranchising eligible voters is the greatest. The 90-day threshold passed on August 10th, 2022, 90 days before the midterms. Any removal of numerous voters from the rolls after this point could violate the NVRA. Number four, sustaining these challenges without individualized hearings would violate state and federal due process. Approving these mass challenges would require you to hold hundreds of thousands of individual hearings to avoid violating due process. The challengers' requests appear designed to either expose this board to legal liability or to grind election administration in the county to a halt. Number five, Georgia law requires the board to hold swift, individualized hearings and does not permit the board to place voters into a provisional voting status. Upon the filing of a challenge, the board must provide notice to the challenged voter within 10 business days and hold a hearing on the challenge within 3 to 10 days of service of the notice. The law is also clear that at this hearing, the burden of proof rests entirely on the person making the challenge, who must prove that the person being challenged is not qualified to remain on the list of electors. In other words, the challenger must prove on an individual by individual basis through a hearing that a voter is not qualified to vote before the board may take an action that affects the voter. For the reasons discussed above, merely checking names against address lists or self-reporting canvassing results do not meet this burden. Concerned citizens of Spalding County look forward to submitting open records requests to ensure that the Board of Elections is in compliance and not systematically disenfranchising voters.
Thank you for your comments. Do I understand correctly that you sent us that document?
I did not send it, the Brennan Center for Justice did it.
Okay, thank you very much, as long as we have a copy. Have all the board members had a chance to view the agenda?
Yes.
Okay, do we have any corrections? Do we have any corrections? We have a little time delay. Okay, then I guess the agenda will be approved as written.
You have a motion?
Need a motion, okay.
A second.
And second. All in favor?
Aye.
The agenda is approved as written.
Did Ben vote?
Ben, did you vote?
Sorry, if that's on, it's filed as,
Thank you.
thank you.
Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes of the last meeting?
Yes.
Ben, have you had a chance to review the minutes of the last meeting?
Yes, sir, that'll be good.
Are there any corrections? No.
Not for me.
Move to. Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Unanimous. We'll now have the report of the election supervisor.
You'll find the report under general, after you flip general. Voter registration update. As of date, absentee applications received by the Office of Elections and Voter Registration is 1,302. Battles, this is the deceased that we've processed, are 38. Online voter registration is 117. This includes, when I say duplicates, this means they were already registered to vote. Everything was a duplicate of their current record. So out of the 117, this includes some that were duplicate, name changes, address changes, and new registrations. Department of Driver Services, 772. The same thing here. This includes duplicates, name changes, and address changes and new registrations. Felons, 33. NCOAs, just a reminder there, that's national change of addresses. That's in reference to Spalding County addresses. If it was a change, that was 360 that were processed. Logic and accuracy. Logic and accuracy of all voting equipment began on September the 14th. Early voting, which covers all possible precincts and ballot combinations, has been balanced and will be closed out and ready for deployment to the early voting precinct tomorrow by noon. It's not being deployed, but it's readied. It will be readied by noon tomorrow. We will then proceed, beginning with precinct 1 and moving forward until completion. Logic and accuracy takes place from 9 a.m. until 4 p.m., Monday through Friday, with a lunch break from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m., and is open to public for viewing.
Ken, before you go any further, I don't know
That's
that
okay.
it's in our packet.
It should be. Election
report.
supervisor, do you not have it?
I don't have it.
No, we have August. Did it wind up somewhere else maybe?
I'm just looking to see if it was put somewhere else, but no, it should be in your package.
Is it under general?
It should be under
Would-
general. If you
would
would look
that-
under your other tabs, just in case, but it should be behind general is where it should appear. And I
Can-
apologize.
Should we just table it? Till we
She
have
can
it.
give us her
I can
verbal
give the report,
without-
but-
Please give us a
without
verbal
having
report.
the
Okay,
written
and I
report.
apologize for that. I believe they're there, we're just not, or somewhere, we're just not seeing them, but. Okay, all right, so we're gonna move ahead. Acquiring of additional space to the voter registration and elections office. I'm pleased to announce that the county has graciously given over extra space to the Office of Elections and Voter Registration in order that we may be able to conduct office procedures and processes in a more efficient manner. A very sincere thank you to County Manager Steve Ledbetter and Lance Owens for making this happen very quickly in order that we may utilize the space for logic and accuracy testing along with other election and voter registration processes as well. So I invite all of the board members, if you would like to come by and see that area and how we're utilizing it at present, please do so. Felon process updated to the board. If you will look, I believe you do have a felon process. Please tell me you have that. Okay. So I'm just this is provided by Billy Preston, voter registration coordinator. but I am going to go over it with you. When a voter appears on the felon report sent to us by the Secretary of State's office via eNet, we compare all information provided to us with the voter's information on their voter registration record before we mark the voter as a felon to ensure that we have the correct voter. If there is any doubt when comparing the information, the record is not marked as a felon. Once we mark the voter as a felon, a letter is automatically generated through eNet that we print and send to the voter. It is mailed directly to the voter, and we keep a copy attached to the voter registration's record, their card, their physical card. And attached, you'll see a letter that goes to the voter, to the voter that has been sent to us by the state that they're now a felon. But this is the letter that goes to them. Okay. This letter provides the voter a 30-day window, as it states in the letter, to respond to our office should he or she believe this has been done in error. Once the 30-day window has passed with no response from the voter is then removed from the voter registration system, and not when he or she is initially marked as a felon. This has been the process from day one since I've been in office, since August 5th of last year. So I want to make that clear that that is how felons have been processed. Any questions? Okay.
No one has any questions for him?
Okay. Felon process, no, we did that, press release. You should also have under general information a press release that was just composed today and is marked to go out tomorrow morning. The office, and I'm just going to hit on just a couple of things. I'm not going to read it to you, but a couple of really important dates. October the 11th, that's the deadline to register to vote or make a change to a voter record, like a name change, an address change, for the November 8th, 2022 election. October 11th is also the date that the Office of Elections and Voter Registration will begin to mail out the requested absentee ballots for requested applications that we've already received. Advanced voting, early dates, October 17th through the 22nd from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. That's a Monday through Saturday. October the 24th through the 29th, 9 a.m. until 5 p.m. Monday through Saturday. And October 31st through November the 4th from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. Advanced voting will take place at the Athletic Hall of Fame located at 841 Memorial Drive, Griffin. October 28th is the last day to request an absentee ballot by mail. And November the 8th, of course, is Election Day, and all 18 precincts will be open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Just some important information there. Please feel free to share. Voter registration status. Voters can check their status if they're wondering. Of course, they're more than welcome to check it through our office to verify things. But this is a great tool, the My Voter page, and this is all a part of the press release. And that's the link there that they can use. And they can also follow their absentee ballot there as well. Logic and accuracy testing, and I'm not going to repeat this because I just told you all, but it's open to the public, but that is a part as well. Dropbox location for absentee ballots may be dropped off at the Office of Elections and Voter Registration. The camera secure Dropbox is available as required by law from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. during the hours and dates of advanced early voting. So you would just note those dates above. And then just an important notice, we do receive a lot of phone calls in the office. There are a lot of there's many mailers going out right now from various organizations, parties, etc. And so it does confuse the voter oftentimes as to, well, am I registered, or didn't I request an absentee ballot? So we put this important notice out there so that they understand we are not automatically sending out mailers from our office. Okay? And I believe that concludes my report, unless you have any questions.
Any questions?
The Dropbox is now located inside of the building?
It is.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We will now move on to old business with an update on public relations issues by Roy McLean.
And there isn't any change to that. That was information that probably can drop off at this point unless we still have a need for that. We never did anything with it other than give approval to have conversations about it, so. That's all I have. on
Ben, are
that.
you there?
Lost my note.
Sorry, yes, sir.
Did you hear what Roy said?
Yes, so I'm okay with this being disbanded if the board, I would think a motion would be in order to, disband this ad hoc committee unless there's anybody that thinks to submit it.
Was there even an ad hoc committee, Roy?
I don't think there was. I think it was just, go talk to the county. The county had questions. They were supposed to give us information. We never got anything further from that. I think it was one of those good ideas that
Yeah.
never went anywhere.
So since there isn't a committee,
There's no,
it can
there's
just
no
die
need
a
for a
natural
motion.
death, right?
Yes, it
Okay.
can just drop off.
Yeah,
the
so it
agenda.
sounds like we just, like we always did, like that would be appropriate, so,
So we should just drop that off the agenda then.
yes, sir.
Next is a discussion as who is to serve on the bylaws committee, and that committee will include a code of conduct. Does anybody have anything they want to say?
Yes, I'd like to address that. On July 17th, I presented an email, and this is a quote, presented motion to amend, and it really should be, I'm submitting an action item for the agenda. To amend the bylaws and create a committee to draft a version of the amended laws. You'll notice there's no reference to a code of conduct. And the reason I put that forward is I believe that the employees, I can be corrected on this, of the elections office are bound by the election code of Spalding County. So it doesn't seem appropriate to me, that even if we want a code of conduct, it seems like that is a separate documentation from the bylaws, which is how we do work here. So-
The employees are bound by the personnel policy of Spalding County and by, any rules that are associated with that policy. You, however, are not. So any type of code of conduct that you were to enact would be for the board.
I beg to differ in that, are the employees of the election office, are they employed by Spalding County?
They are, Kim is employed by you. The employees in that office are employed by her, and actually they're all subject to the personnel policies and the personnel, ordinance for Spalding County.
Is
It's
that-
my understanding that Spalding County does have a code of ethics, is that correct?
Spalding County has a new ethics ordinance actually that was passed within the last couple of months, and I actually just emailed it to you tonight, so you'll have that when you check your email when you get home.
It's still my opinion that in terms of work, that the two be separated out. In other words, either that or the bylaws are gonna look like an encyclopedia.
I don't see any reason why they would have to be put together.
Okay.
Does anybody have any objection to separating the code of conduct from the bylaws?
I never expected that they were together in the first place.
Nor did I.
Okay, well, it was
Okay.
presented on the agenda.
I'm just making officially sure.
Okay.
Okay. Ben, are you there?
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Can you turn your video on?
Any lag or anything like Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, but we can't see you.
Okay, yeah, you don't want to see me.
Okay.
I've been in the sun all day long, so.
Okay, then.
Very nice.
Uh,
But, so, you know, in terms of, I think the word ethics was used, and I didn't want it to be confused with the county ethics policy. I know we've had some issues with, I mean, actually how, like, you know, the Board of Elections office employees have been treated. You know, not really worth discussing the details here, but, you know, we probably should be all held to the same standard, in terms of that, and, that was kind of where that, I think, language came from, just to clear that up.
Do you object to having the two separated?
I don't object at all having to be separated. I'm not even, as Stephanie said, I mean, we're ruled by 769 and 202 and the, you know, open records and meetings. I mean, and I don't, besides putting all that stuff together, you know, with the viewpoint that whether we have a change in local government or not, we'll have different laws next year, that will probably override or modify 769 or 202. I still feel, as when we last discussed this, that trying to come up with a comprehensive set of bylaws to try to encapsulate something that's transitory would probably not be a very good use of time. That being said, I'm not against if anybody wants to try to take on any of the gray areas that we have right now.
Thank you.
That's it.
Like to continue, Jim?
Sure.
Now I'm quoting from the former bylaws of Spalding County Board of Elections and Registration. The good news is it's possible to amend rather than to create a brand-new set of bylaws. So now I'm quoting from the bylaws. The bylaws were amended on September the 11th, 2018 by Margaret W. Bentley, Ballard Brooks, Randall S. Gooden, Glenda Henley, and Betty Bryant. And here's the good news. Section 8 in the bylaws amendments provides guidance on amending the bylaws and updating the official text of the bylaws. So what that means to me, we have the starting point of the bylaws, and then we're going to be looking at how can we implement the changes from House Bill 769 and Senate Bill 202. So in other words,
So, point of order, so Stephanie, what was I mean, I'm sure you have this at your fingertips, but what was the exact language? I thought we dissolved the prior bylaws versus the other words, but I mean, it could have been another word that we used, so did we, I mean, as far as I know, we don't have the other bylaws in effect at all.
I would have to look back at the minutes.
My memory recalls that they were dissolved.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not against us amending anything, but it was a very long document, and it's also like, I mean, I'm pretty good at Microsoft Word and search and replace, and just trying to get the language straight between all 3 or 4 of the different, you know, legalese, you know, bills we have to deal with. I mean, if y'all want to take it on, bless your heart, as we say. But it seems like it would be simpler to start from what we have to deal with and then add on the situations that, you know, have came up from there. But that's just my 2 cents. I appreciate it.
Okay, so if we're going to do this, we have to form a committee, and a committee has to have at least 2 people on it, or else it's not a committee. So does anybody volunteer to be on this committee?
I definitely volunteer.
So do I.
I do.
Okay. We have 3 volunteers for the committee. Jim O'Brien, Dexter Wimbish, and James Newland. And the committee will need a leader of a sort, a chairman, I guess you'd say. Will you do that, Jim?
I certainly will.
Okay. Then I suspect you'll be in contact with Dexter and I.
Yes.
Okay.
Let me just say for constituents' sake, I've already started a comparison with the former bylaws, if you will, and another column for Senate Bill 769 and 202, and the changes are extensive. But I think we're up to the task.
Okay.
I may have a Word version of the prior bylaws
Oh, I definitely have them.
in Word.
No, oh,
I'm not sure that I do, but I may. If I
Okay.
do, I'll provide those to you, because
Thank
that'll
you.
make the corrections.
yeah, because I think that the original was PDF.
I may have it in Word.
Okay, good, thank you.
Okay. I think we can move on from that, in that case. We'll now have an update on the file move and inventory from Roy McLean.
Well, most of the files have been moved, Mr. Chair. The inventory has not begun yet. We're still trying to figure out the storage piece of that. But the files have physically been moved, and I hope to get on that very shortly. And by shortly, I mean in the next week or so. And once we have that, it may go fairly quickly. We did run into a couple of little glitches with the secure care facility. When we first started having conversations, we were told that power wouldn't be a problem, that Wi-Fi was available, and after the fact, we find out that they won't give us the Wi-Fi password, and that power, we're gonna have to probably run extension cords to a generator to make that all happen. So I'm hopeful that in the new space that we're getting, there may be some opportunity to do some file storage there and maybe save the county some money at the same time. But that's after the election. That's in the mid-November, December timeframe, before we can really start getting on doing something about the facility. Any questions about the file move?
I have a question, but it's not really for you, it's for Kim, unless you know the answer. Is our new space adjacent to the existing space?
Oh, yes.
Oh, good. I was,
What we have, what we did was we created a walkway through, or a passage from the Dominion, what we call the Dominion Room, where all the equipment is held, into that adjacent space.
okay. I was hoping you'd say that.
Yes, and that has made it so much easier where we can just roll the equipment in, set it up for L&A. We do believe there is enough space to work in there within a storage, but we wanna take our time because there's another space that we can work together to create a larger area for storage, so.
Okay, great.
Okay.
So are you done, Roy?
Yeah, just to take that one step further, there's a viewing area, air conditioned, where people could come in and watch the LNA process, so went to great lengths to try to make that comfortable for folks to be able to get in there and see that process. Of course, they need to let us know they're coming, but it's a nice viewing area that was created.
Okay. We'll now move on to new business. The first item is a discussion regarding executive sessions. Mr. Wimbish.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this item was placed as a result of an inquiry from a constituent as to whether or not the process has changed as it involves staff and others being involved in executive sessions, and I just wanted clarification on that. I think that previously staff was not involved in executive sessions unless they were called in, and is that the same policy, or we're changing that policy?
To my knowledge, there was not a policy as far as whether or not staff was involved in executive session. Typically, the head of agency is included in an executive session unless there's a reason for them to be specifically excluded, and that would be at the decision of the board. And whether or not they were there or not would be at the discretion of the board, and that would be for any executive session and any employee. If there were a need for information, for example, from another employee at the elections office, it would be appropriate for them to be involved in that executive session, for whatever that limited purpose would be. So it is completely up to you as to whether or not that occurs. And I wouldn't think there would be a need for there to be a policy, simply because often the head of agency is gonna have information that is, pertinent to whatever we're discussing in the executive session.
And just historically, I've only been around since December of 2020, but we have always had staff in executive sessions, so that's been the historical precedent.
I do not know what happened before I began, representing the board.
I know that
so.
oftentimes what happens is you don't have staff in executive session, they're called in to give reports. And having the staff present from the beginning of an executive session, for me, it seems to be a little irregular. But if it's a decision that the board is making, I would understand that decision, but it seems a little irregular to have staff in the executive session during the entire time.
It's up to you as to whether or not they are, but according to the,
Ben raised his hand, sorry. So back in 2012 through 2014, we did have staff, we did have, Harry in the executive session as well, unless there was a reason not to be. I don't have any precedence, or preference one way or not, but, that does seem to be consistent over almost like a decade at this point.
as far as meeting, if, for example, if the planning commission were to go into an executive session, most likely they would have the community development director in that session, based on the fact that whatever the topic is, it's just very typical that the person in charge has information that's pertinent to that. The county manager, for example, is in almost every executive session with the Board of Commissioners. The chief appraiser would be included in executive session with the Board of Tax Assessors. So that, it's not atypical for that to occur. And it is completely allowed by the Open Meetings Act. But again, it's up to the board. It's at your discretion. And I think it would just have to depend on whatever the topic.
Okay.
My sense is that, at least over the period of time that any of us have been on the board, that has been, maybe not the policy, but the practice. So if we're going to change that, some kind of action would have to be taken, I would think.
I don't believe there is any policy, so
I
I
didn't
don't
say
believe that.
policy.
Well, I don't believe any action would need to be taken, because it's easily on a case-by-case basis. I mean,
Okay.
because there very well could be situations where you would not want staff
Well, that's certainly
included.
true, yes. certainly
So there is policy or practice, there's no action that would need to be taken, in my
Okay.
opinion.
true. Anything else on that?
And so do we have specific instances where staff would not be in an executive session? I assume personnel issues, performance evaluations, things of that nature?
So personnel issues, yes, more than likely, although you might want to bring staff in if there were questions that you needed to ask or direction that you needed to give. Some things, if it were staff other than the head of agency, most of those things would have to be done in an open meeting. Personnel issues regarding the head of agency, however, and evaluations can be done in executive session.
Nothing further.
Nothing further? Okay, we'll move on from there. Timing of staff reports. Mr. Wimbish.
I just had a question for, Director Slaughter. Is it possible that we get your report when we get the agenda, so we have time to review it? A couple meetings back, I had some questions I probably would not have had if I had the report earlier. And also, if we adopt that practice of having that beforehand, it may be that if you couldn't come to a meeting, we wouldn't have to cancel a meeting. You could send somebody, like maybe Mr. Preston, to come present your report. We wouldn't have, that wouldn't require us to change a meeting if you had to be out of town or some emergency came up, so we wouldn't have to cancel the meeting.
I definitely understand about the part about, and I would have never expected the meeting to have been rescheduled, this meeting rescheduled. You all could have continued on. But definitely in the absence, if I had to be absent, I would be more than glad to supply that report ahead of time. I'm gonna leave it to the board's discretion whether you want to make a decision to enforce whether the report, because I'm gonna be very honest, just like now, we're in LNA D. And so I may could have that report 5 days early one day. I might get to have it, but I may be just like today, because we were in the midst of finishing up early voting LNA. Today I was finishing that report. I'm just being honest. So that can differ. I do not welcome that extra hardship, but I'm gonna let that be to the decision of the board.
Kim, I wanted to say that having the minutes ahead of time was a real plus for me personally, that coming here like and reading them in advance, so I felt like I was much more prepared, and I really appreciate them having that. And I guess I feel the same way about your monthly report. That would be a help for us, just to see what we need to deal with.
And also on that note, say you made a decision to say, okay, we want your report 5 days ahead of time, which I'm sure maybe I can admit, but there may be things that transpire that I wanna add to that report.
Please do.
Well,
So, again, I'm gonna leave that to the decision.
I don't think I'm looking for a time frame, but just when you present the agenda, if that report could be presented,
Well, the agenda has to be provided 7 days prior to the meeting.
And this time you even had it earlier than that.
I don't think it's practical to do it that far in advance because there's gonna be so many changes.
Ben?
So it sounds like the root cause here is that, board members maybe don't feel like we're getting, up to the minute updates, particularly during midterms, elections, et cetera. I don't think like a interim or in progress report is not actually gonna be the report presented at the meeting, because something could have come up the day before or 2 days before. But having something that's, a little bit more official. Kim was, actually, a while back, sending out email summaries to the board, in between, in the middle of the month. So it kind of sounds like that's what's being requested, but, I'll go to the board.
Kim, I understand that your workload varies, to say the least. But I do think, if at all possible, it would be good to get some part of it a little early. Maybe not 7 days,
Yeah.
but 3 days?
Yes.
2
So could I
days?
propose this, just think about it?
Sure.
What if you have an update in email form? But it's laid out, it's bullet point, mid-month. And that can also include foreseen items maybe to come. So I just would rather, when I compose a report, it's a report,
Yeah.
and I'm finished, it's complete.
I don't
Because the
think any-
update could even possibly include other information that's beneficial to you, outside of what necessarily needs to be in a report.
We're not
So-
looking to add to your workload.
No.
But it does,
I know.
being
So,
honest.
7 days out is too early for me. but even a day or two ahead, if we had a chance just to review the report, that would be helpful.
Again, I'm gonna leave the mandation of when the timing of the report to the board.
So, alright, so what if, we basically, it's up to the tier that approves items for the agenda, but I leave it up there, all the members, we're not gonna take anything off the agenda that we don't care. So what if we kind of combine the agenda, creation process, and Kim could just send out whatever she had as an unofficial and incomplete, as we have from election night reporting, report of like, hey, these things are top of mind while we're working on the agenda, because it seems like, I mean, none of us, want to hear something on a meeting night the first time, right? That's kind of sounds like a root cause of what we're trying to avoid.
Could noon Monday before our meetings, you give us a status report? Would that be helpful?
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were talking to.
About noon on Monday before our meeting, would that be helpful?
I'm gonna leave it to you all when to decide to require the report.
That's what I think is reasonable.
I'm fine, I mean, so long as I have something before I get it, I'm okay with it.
That would work for me.
Me too.
And if something happens and you don't get it to us, I'm not gonna have a problem with that. But just shoot for that, give it a shot, see what happens.
When we said this is also, so 7 days, so we've got 7 day notice for a regular meeting, 7 day notice for, agenda, before 7 day notice for agenda items, as well as, for actually basing that we're having a meeting, so, versus a Monday before, if we had 7 days leading for us to be responsible for presenting agenda items, as well as for Kim to be responsible for presenting an outline of a report, and then we publish it. That seems like we're killing 3 birds with 1 stone.
I'd like to ask you, Stephanie, can I ask you a question? You attend a lot of meetings. Is it normally a requirement for a report to be submitted prior to the meeting? And I don't know that you can speak to that, but that's just,
I can speak to the report of the county manager. That is not a written report that is provided to the Board of Commissioners. The county manager makes his report at the Board of Commissioners meeting, and it's just a matter of updating the Board of Commissioners. That's really the only example that I have, and he does not provide a written report to the Board of Commissioners
So
at all.
I guess the point I was trying to make is that, if we are to require Kim to submit a written report, 7 days prior, or 4 days, 5 business days prior, or whatever, that, we as a board need to make sure we're committing to, getting her things that she's responsible to on a timely manner.
I think basically what you're asking for is 1 day in advance.
Yeah, we're asking for noon, Monday, the day before the meeting.
Did you hear that, Ben?
Okay, yeah, sorry, yes, I misunderstood that. I'm out in favor of that.
In hopes that, she wouldn't have to write it twice that way.
So when do we need to have our agenda items in so that it's published? When are we responsible to have our items in if we're gonna do that? What's the thought?
I think preferably, in order to accommodate our 7-day requirement, your agenda items should be in about 10 days in advance of our meeting.
And then we can amend the agenda if
If
necessary.
things come up after the fact, then
Okay.
we can amend the agenda.
So Kim,
But
you'll
we are
send
bound by that 7-day.
some email out that says, I need your agenda items by X day or time?
I
And
believe she has been doing that.
I'm just checking, but yes, that's why I've been actually getting a few items on the agenda, because I've been reminded.
You're making me smile, we're talking bylaws.
All right,
we good on that topic now? Okay, so I guess we have agreed to that? Okay.
Okay.
Moving on to discussion of the felon removal process. Mr. Wimbish.
Okay, I asked Ms. Slaughter, a few months ago about the felon removal process. She's provided us with that process now. I also like to, thank, Ms. Slaughter for adding in your, and I'm gonna read it, the felon letter, the language that's, I don't know if it was there before, if you added it, but I just wanna read it into the record. It says, once you have completed your entire felony sentence, including incarceration, parole, and probation, you will be eligible to vote. The only requirement to regain your voting rights in Georgia after completion of your felony sentence is to properly re-register to vote. Voter registration applications may be obtained by contacting the office or by accessing voter registration online through the Secretary of State's election website. I want to say thank you for that language. That is exactly what I was speaking to.
Okay, and just to clarify, that language has not been added, it's always been there.
Okay. Well,
I just want to make sure that's clarified
And-
to the
and-
public and everyone.
well, I go back to, again, you know, information beforehand, I would have known that, and it was, when I asked about it, it wasn't given. So I appreciate the fact that it's in there, and, thank you.
You're welcome.
Moving on to absentee application process. This is an application for an absentee ballot, right?
It
Is
is,
that
it
what
is,
we're talking about?
it is actually in response to a constituent request.
Okay.
We had a problem.
Okay.
Issue with, an absentee ballot. I think Mr. Preston has fully resolved that issue now. And that report is, it was included in, our information for this meeting.
Is that the one of which we're aware?
If Ms. Slaughter wants to give,
That wasn't, no, it has been resolved,
Okay,
but that was not a part of my report.
okay, okay.
No.
But-
I mean, do you,
I received the documents from you and it's in here, so I don't know where it came from.
okay, that was probably previous then when I answered. When the questions were out there and I answered the questions of concern, I submitted that, but it was not a part of this report. But it was through via email that it was the understanding that it was still wanting, that you had still desired for it to be on the agenda, so that's why it was left on the agenda.
So thankfully, the officer solved it before the meeting, and that's awesome, so thank you, everybody. Let's move on.
Are we okay? That's resolved?
That's
Okay.
resolved.
We're now moving to board member comments. Ben, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I really appreciate everybody, and, sorry I'm not there, but, anyway, I got all the folks in the audience tonight, that had a convenient time, and, I look forward to next month, and I'll see y'all again. Thanks.
Roy?
I have nothing.
Mr. Wimbish?
I have nothing.
Jim?
I'd like to publicly thank the workers from the county who helped us move the records from the elections office over to the climate control facility. They worked really hard, and it wasn't easy, and it was hot, and pushing carts up the cement was a job, but it's done, and it's a better location for the records.
My staff as well, and who said that, that climate controlled is not all it's cracked up to be.
I think there was a certain spouse that was present, was that correct?
I
about that?
think so, yeah.
Big guy.
I'd like to add to Jim's comments that the county and the Board of Elections and Voter Registration do and have worked together very well, and it certainly makes our jobs easier, and especially Stephanie's jobs easier, to have that assistance from them, because otherwise we would have to do everything ourselves, and I'm not sure that would even be possible. So thank you very much to the county, to the employees who help us out, and thank all of you for being here tonight. We appreciate it very much.
Jim, can I just add?
Sure.
If you're finished commented. I'd meant to make this a part of my report, but it was off to the side. It's the proclamation in recognition of National Voter Registration Day and September the 20th, 2022. And I do want to read it because I think it's very important and it holds a lot of value. Whereas one of the most fundamental and sacred rights of our country is the right to vote. In order for our government to function effectively and respond to the needs of our people, citizens must play a role in shaping it. And whereas voting provides Americans with a voice in building the city, county, state, and country we want to live in together and we hope to leave to our children and grandchildren. And whereas it is up to each individual to exercise the right that so many struggled to obtain and protect. Too often voters disengage in the electoral process when the President of the United States is not on the ballot. It is important for voters to participate in every election at every level. Whereas the right to vote freely and fairly and to have our vote counted is a sacred and fundamental part of our nation's character. With this right, anything is possible. Without it, so much is lost. For democracy to work, it is up to all of us to protect the right to vote and then exercise our right. And whereas the first step is to ensure we are registered to vote, National Voter Registration Day reminds us of our right and our responsibility as individual citizens to exercise the right to vote and ensure that our voices are heard. Now therefore, be it resolved, the Spalding County Board of Commissioners encourages all eligible Spalding County residents to ensure they are registered to vote. Check your registration status and ensure your registration is accurate and up to date, and encourage your neighbors, family, and friends to do the same. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the county to be affixed this, the 19th day of September, in the year of our Lord, 2022, signed by Commissioner Chairman Clay Davis and Kathy Gibson, County Clerk. Thank you.
The county attorney requests an executive session to discuss pending or potential litigation, settlement, claims, administrative proceedings, or other judicial actions brought or to be brought by or against the Spalding County Board of Elections and Registration or any officer or employee, or in which the Board of Elections or any officer or employee may be directly involved. I would entertain a motion to.
Mr. Vice Chair, I did not request an executive session, and there's no,
Would
I
that be
understand I asked for
Okay.
it to be removed, and the chairman suggested that it remain, even though I have not requested.
So would the chair entertain a motion to adjourn?
I would. Second, please. All in favor? This meeting is adjourned.
Did Jim O'Brien say you second that? Did you second that?
Yes.
You did.
Jim, don't believe me. Please. Yes.
I told him, but I didn't catch it till the third time.
What now?
No problem.
Jim, please write your note on.
We go around in circle.